All right, I guess we'll get going here. Anybody in the hallway coming in? No. Hey, I'm Bob Rook. I'm with AECOM. I think I've been involved in this panel now for about 6 or 7 years, either sitting there or rotating out to here to do this. One thing I realized when I was sitting there is nobody wanted to hear the guy out there talk too much, so I won't do that. But I will tell you, I was just down, ran into another former center commander, Larry McAllister, who works up at headquarters and heads up engineering, and we got to talking a little bit about all the things he needs to fix, and then we started talking a little bit about hunting, and and all of a sudden I heard somebody say it's 3:15, and in my mind I was supposed to start this at 3 o'clock. I had an absolute panic attack down there on the floor a few minutes ago. So I'm kind of starting to run up here, and I see John Hurley walking. I said, okay, I can't be late if I'm behind him, so it worked out okay. At this time, you all know where the exits are. You all know that we're going to ask you, when we get to questions at the end, and we're going to do it that way because they're recording all these sessions, and the microphones, help us do that. So really want to make sure that we let everybody hear the question, and it's recorded for posterity's sake. This is the energy sessions are always popular here. There's been a lot of emphasis, and it's a changing program, and I think maybe we'll hear some of that today. So first up, we have Colonel John Hurley. John's been the commander at the Huntsville Engineering and Support Center since July 29, 2016. They execute more than 6,000 contracts a year, over $2.1 billion. I think it was a good bit higher than that this year. Maybe 3.3. Yeah. 3.3. He broke all records. Can't go back and fix that. But John also, though, I mean, he's a 3-time commander, and in the Corps of Engineers, he also commanded the Buffalo District. He commanded the Japan District. And then he also worked at the Transatlantic Division as a deputy for a long time and really ran the thing because his boss was always gone. So we've known each other for a long time. You'll enjoy him. After him, we have John Klein. He's the Executive Director, Department of the Navy's Resilient Energy Program Office. He oversees planning, coordination, integration, and energy resiliency of NAVFAC projects. I always, it's that time of year where you always like to say where people went to school. And well, I don't hear something really weird. I'm just looking at yours, and it doesn't. Where'd you go to school, John?
Texas A&M.
So I did see that somewhere, and so you always get the whoop out of somebody out there. And John, of course, here's a West Point guy, and then we're going to get to Dan Soto. Dan's the Energy Rates and Renewables Division Chief for AVCEC, and it says out of Tyndall. Where are you hanging your hat right now, my friend?
Panama City Beach.
So that's not a bad place to be, but a lot of problems down there. I say for him, since I live in Alabama, he's a University of Alabama grad. And
Roll Tide.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, so we're not going to talk too much about football on this panel right now. So I just thank these guys for showing up. I thank our sponsors, for this event. And the folks from SAME have really set up a really good conference. Make sure you thank them. Make sure you talk afterwards about what can be done better and what you like about these sessions and what you didn't. So I think it's been a really good conference. I judge it by about the 200 business cards in my pocket that are gone now. So, John, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Well, I guess you can hear me back. It's pretty loud. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for showing up here. Appreciate it. I'm just going to run you through a little bit about the Huntsville Energy Program in general and some of the trends that have happened over the last year and how we see them getting applied to our program. And let's see how this goes. Okay, yeah, this works pretty good. Okay, well, one of the things we want to do is just show a little org chart because I don't think people understand the visibility that the energy program gets. A lot of programs are delegated pretty far down, so a district commander or center commander can execute a lot of that. And that's not necessarily true with the energy programs. So what we're trying to represent here is the different levels that are on there. So you can see the Secretary of Defense level, right? Honorable Niemeyer level. They have energy policy approvals for the PPAs. Let me get to my slide here, it'll be easier. You can see at the Army level, and I'll just talk about the Army projects right now, the Assistant Secretary of the Army's office reserves the right for policy and approval authority for the ESPCs, the USACEs, and the PPAs. And those are basically the third-party financed energy programs we have. And then the AXM is putting out policy for the same programs. So the AXM is the Army's Assistant Chief of Staff for Installation Management. So you can see that unlike a lot of programs that get kind of pushed down and truly are decentralized in an execution mode, the energy programs, especially these ones, still have tremendous visibility at the high level and are going to get approved at that one. You know, and that sometimes affects how quickly we can turn them. They take a little while to get them approved, depending on it. So I want to get that out front. The second thing I want to do is just kind of show, you know, an org chart of USACE. I think a lot of folks that have not dealt with USACE before don't understand it, but USACE is broken into 9 geographic regions, and those are usually commanded by a general officer, and they have senior executives with them running the business and programs part of it. And if USACE had its way, the vast majority of programs are executed from your geographic district, right? That's kind of the first choice. But there are some projects that are unique and special, and they get executed by our centers, whether it's the Research and Development Center or the Army Geospatial Center, or in this case, the Engineering and Support Center down in Huntsville. So we're allowed to execute a lot of the energy programs directly, since they're centrally managed and have kind of unique expertise associated with them. But that's a little bit of confusion for folks, because they may wonder, hey, well, how come Tulsa District's not doing that? And they're probably doing 90% of the work in the area, but there will be some stuff that isn't handled by them. You know, there's, I think over the last couple of years, we've had some keys to success on our energy program, and I'd say, you know, they're listed up there, but the first thing I'd say about the success is, you know, these are really partnerships, right? We need a great collaboration with the installations about their future, what they need, their vision for it, right? We got to partner with industry to deliver those. And then finally, you know, working with the Army and DoD to get those things executed. Especially as we move into kind of new policy about the energy programs, we really need some innovative thinking about how to continue to deliver these. I think some of the contractors out there realize that some of the pipelines have slowed down a little bit. And I think one of the ways around that's going to be through some innovation and helping us think of a different way to kind of the next tranche of projects that are out there. You know, there are, the Army at least, you know, the slide says we've pivoted in our energy policy, and I guess you could look at it that way. I'm looking at it just as the energy policies move towards, you know, we're in phase 2.0 now, right? So during phase 1.0, it was really about getting renewables out there. And so we had a lot of projects that were just about renewables, and a renewable project was, you know, an end in and of itself, right? If you had something that broke even and it was renewable, then that was good. And there was a lot of work done under that, and that made a lot of sense. But as we move on to the next phase, really, it's not just about renewable, right? It's understanding that there are threats out there, and we need our energy policy to have some security and resiliency associated with them. And that's what you see in this, at least for the Army, the next phase of this is really about security and resiliency. And I say that's not just physical security, but we're really concerned about kind of cybersecurity aspects of this. And if you've participated in any of those forums, you can appreciate that. You know, there's a long way our industry has to go in just understanding what a cybersecurity threat is and understanding the best way to defend against it or to be resilient against it, and kind of the most efficient way of getting it out there. I'll say with the Army, one of its definitions for becoming energy security and energy resilient, you know, the Army directed that its critical infrastructure would have 14 days of water and energy. And so the installation, the landholding commands, right, our IMCOM and AMC and whatnot, you know, they're going through the process of defining what are critical infrastructure, and then how do I get at that, right? How do you get 14 days of water supply, right, on an installation? How do you get to 14 days of energy supply on there? And then can any of our existing energy programs, you know, accomplish their intended purpose and also accomplish getting to that kind of security and resiliency aspect? Okay. You know, some of the things we're seeing as we implement that new policy, this kind of 2.0, this migration towards security and resiliency, not just kind of renewables, we're seeing some things just manifest themselves out there. One of them is it does require a lot more robust upfront planning. You do really need a much more holistic and a systemic way to think about your energy issues on the base. I think you got to be pretty savvy. You want to make sure that when you're implementing these projects, you do so in a way that you not only put energy security and resiliency into the plan, but you do it in a way that you don't preclude future projects that may even further increase security and resiliency, right? And so that's really some, advanced calculus, differential equation type thought on how to do that. And that's where we're really looking for some great ideas from industry and the other services about how to tackle that one. I got a couple of good projects, I think, that get at this energy and security, and I'd like to just talk a little bit about them. One is the project that's at Kwajalein Island. That's a multi-phase project. We estimate that it'll be something in the order of $150 million to $250 million in capital investment from industry on that one. You can see up there some of the features that are getting in there. We believe we're able to mitigate risk in implementing this because we're taking a phased approach at implementing the project. I think that's been pretty successful up until now. Part of the energy and security we think we're going to be able to get to through the renewable aspect of it. So in this case, the renewables could help us with the security and the resiliency, but also being able to leverage some microgrids out there to help us on that one. We think current results look like that we'll have nearly a 10% reduction in energy and a 55% reduction in diesel fuel. And that's probably pretty significant on an island where all the diesel fuel came in by ship. So our ability to kind of drive that down is certainly a security measure in and of itself. Another next project is the Washington Headquarters Services project up there, where we're going to be putting in combined heat and power plant. Again, this I think will be a great project. I think there'll be some energy and security on there. The goal with the microgrids and the CHP is to make sure that we can definitely island the Pentagon if we needed to at the certain one. Right now, our estimate is that with the current ECMs, if they get all implemented, that will be able to take care of 95% of the power requirements at the Pentagon if we needed to. So that's pretty good. Okay, briefly, if you're not familiar with all the with all the programs, I'll just highlight a couple of the key programs that we leverage. So we have our energy savings performance contracting and our utility energy savings contracting project. Right, those are the first one is where we have a private industry upfront some capital, put in some energy conservation measures, and in return we get the installation gets some energy savings, and a lot of that savings get passed right back to the contractor. So it allows the installation to not have to tackle some energy issues it had. Industry handles that upfront cost on that, and in return it gets savings back in return. Utility energy savings contracting is a similar, except for rather than being a private company, right, it's a utility entity that's doing the work. The other one is the power purchase agreement programs. These are generally run out of our Office of Energy Initiatives or Office of Energy Assurance. Those are the Army and the Air Force offices that work out of their Assistant Secretary's office. And those are looking at large renewable projects mainly. Of course, we got to tie them in to energy security and resiliency issues now, but they're fundamentally a renewable project. I think a good example of that is a project that was commissioned maybe a year ago or so at Redstone Arsenal. It's a 10 megawatt facility. It has 1 or 2 megawatts of backup battery power at it. It really allows them to shave peak energy usage, which can really drive down their cost of operating during the summer at the peak hours. It's great to see the battery technology developing and getting out there. It's really not, for the installations, they hear battery and they think, I have a battery that'll run for like 3 or 4 days. I don't think they realize that the technology isn't there yet and the cost efficiency isn't there yet. I think at Redstone we get maybe an hour or so after the sun goes down of power, but really what it allows us to do is to do a lot of peak energy savings, and that's pretty helpful. We have our energy engineering analysis program, and this is a lot more than energy audits, as I said, but this is really holistic planning. And ultimately, what we got to do, use this program to get to some energy solutions on the installations. A REM program is perhaps one of the my favorite programs out there, right? It allows us, we have a contract in place, it allows us to put contracted energy managers on installations. A lot of our, I'm not sure about the Navy or the Air Force these days, right? But our DPW offices just do not have the manning they had 20 years ago. They're suffering pretty dramatic cuts, and in many cases, they don't have an internal energy manager, right? So this allows us to get that expertise on the staff that can advise the installation and the public works team on some energy efficiencies, right? So for the price of paying for an employee, they're returning, in many cases, they're returning significant returns on that investment, and in many places, it's a great one. And I know we're currently, we're always looking at that return on investment for that program to make sure that it pays for itself and does more. And I know the Army's doing a data call to kind of verify that. I think they're going to be pretty surprised with the results. We have our commercial utilities program where we negotiate utility rates with, on behalf of the Army for our installations. We do that with really just a person or two at the center. We're able to negotiate rates. There's a little bit upfront money from the Army to do that, and the return on investment on this one's something like 70 to 1, so it's really impressive just going in there and negotiating those rates. We have our ERSIP program. This is the program formerly known as ESIP. Right now it has resiliency in the title as well. It is a part of kind of the MILCOM program. It allows installations to develop energy resiliency projects, bring them up through the installation command chain, fight for those projects, get them prioritized, and they get funded like a MILCOM type project. This is pretty helpful for us. We do have a bunch of programs that aren't necessarily run out of our energy division, but they really do help the installation out from an energy posturing. Utility monitoring control systems and our Army metering programs are part of those. For the small businesses out there, if you're concerned about what NAAQS codes we're working on for our energy division, they're listed in here. And I apologize, I'm going pretty fast, but I'm assuming all these slides are available for folks later on. I just want to kind of go through so you know what's in the packet, and if you're interested, you can look at them later. But I do want to get through and let the other speakers present, and then certainly provide you an opportunity for questions. You can look at some of the general projected programs. Right, we think through the general, and this is across USACE, right, from our energy programs that are executed throughout the divisions. It could be anywhere between $90 million and $350 million this year. And then through our third-party financed projects, the ESPC, UESC, and PPAs, we're looking for about $600 million in capital investment from those industries. As I said in the beginning, there are 9 geographic entities in USACE, and so included in this packet are their energy projects coming up for the year, and they're projected. Oh, I'm sorry, okay. Well, we'll go through these. We have an updated slide. We've got to get those to you, and the slides are populated. So we've got all the data in here. I guess we don't have the most current slide deck up there. But we've got some projects up there, and you'll be able to see what projects they are and when we expect their proposals to go out in the street. So, and again, these will be available for you, so I won't spend a lot of time on them, but you can just get a flavor for the type of project. So in our Lakes and Rivers division, based out of Cincinnati, and has that region up through the Great Lakes, you can see there's some examples like HVAC upgrades and solar lighting. In our Mississippi Valley division, that follows the Mississippi Valley from St. Paul all the way down to New Orleans. Some lighting, some energy conservation packages, and HVAC as well. In our North Atlantic division, headquarters out of New York, we have some water lines and heating and lighting system upgrades. In our Northwest Division, headquarters out of Portland, a whole slew of projects, a lot of metering, HVAC, lighting. They've got some air improvements and some energy audits to highlight, and some vehicle charging stations going in, so a lot of exciting work coming out there. In Pacific Ocean Division, we have a heat plant and a natural gas commissioning project coming up. In South Atlantic Division, based out of Atlanta, you can see we got some micro-turbine hydropower projects going in, Army installations, central energy plant upgrades. And some more projects out of South Atlantic Division. Our South Pacific Division out of San Francisco, basically lighting, although you do see some solar projects out there, and wastewater treatment. Our Southwest Division out of Dallas. I mentioned the ERSIP program, formerly ESIP. You know, that's where everyone's, the installations are creating these projects. They get them up, they get them approved by the Army and Congress, and they come back down and they get executed by the geographic districts. So you can see for fiscal year 19, the different array of projects that are out there, and then you can see which district is going to be executing them. So for example, you have Louisville or a Europe district or Tulsa district. And so if you were to go to those districts, you'd be able to find more details about the execution of those projects. And then finally, our Army metering program projects that are coming up this year. So I know I went through that pretty quickly, but I'd say if you're interested in any of those projects, they ring a bell. Say you're interested in the solar or the LED or on compressed air or water lines or whatever, and you know where the district, the division is. Every one of those districts has a booth on the floor. So you can just find anybody in USACE and you can ask, hey, where's the SWD booth or where's the NAD booth, and you get pointed in the right direction. And then you can go there, and their contracting team and their small business advisors and their commanders should be able to provide you more specifics about when those solicitations go out. So, Bob, that's all I have, I think.
Okay, we'll just pass it on.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, we got our, these are probably part of the backup slides. So we often get asked who are our ESCOs that are doing ESPC projects. I think oftentimes it's part of, if you're new to this business but you think you have something to contribute, oftentimes the easiest way to do this is to find someone that's already doing the work, partner with them, and kind of break into the business that way. And these are our power purchase agreement contractors. Okay, here's the general takeaways. I think I covered most of these throughout the briefing. And then I'd say if you've got any information, you've got any questions about energy policy, Huntsville Center is generally looked at through USACE to be the leader in energy policy. I mean, we don't execute it, but we have a division to do that. So feel free to reach out to Huntsville, to our energy division. That's run by Paul Robinson right now. And we can definitely get you pointed in the right direction, even if that means getting you back out to a geographic district if it's one of their projects. We're trying to do a great job on the website of being more transparent about upcoming ESPC and UESC opportunities, other contracting opportunities. All of that should be easily accessible to you from the website. All right.
You ready, huh?
Yeah. All right.
Hi, good afternoon. It's great to see so many people here late on an afternoon in New Orleans. I would have expected more people to be out drinking beer, so thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Just like the Army, we've made the switch to focus on resiliency and energy security, and the CNO is laser focused on maritime readiness, and the reason for that is built into the National Defense Strategy. And so just for your curiosity, raise your hand if you've read the National Defense Strategy. Please take a look at that. That really tells you where we're going, and I'll talk a little bit about that in more detail because it's really important. Because right now, when we're seeing projects, if they don't have resiliency or energy security aspects, or it doesn't support lethality or mission readiness, we're turning those projects back and trying again. So that's a huge focus for us. And in addition to reading the National Defense Strategy, there's a great video out there that I would encourage you guys to look up. So if you Google Vox Video and Spratly Island, Vox Video and Spratly Island, there's a great video about that. After you've read the National Defense Strategy, look at this video. It's like 5 minutes, but it talks about what China's doing in the Pacific and how our Navy needs to rise to meet that challenge. And then it goes to what is the mission of the installations, which is force generation and force projection. And that's where our energy projects have to be focused. We now have a near peer competitor. We have to get to a 355 ship Navy. And so my office is wholly focused on achieving those objectives that are in our maritime readiness strategy. So everything is completely aligned. So if we need more power to build a ship, we're all focused on that. If we need more power to get at the waterfront where the submarines are, that's where we're focused. And it goes to really our nation's prosperity, and the CNO talks a lot about the blue economy. And what he means by that is that the blue economy, and what he says is the blue economy is going to be important for the next 3 to 4 decades. The point of that is that our nation's prosperity is directly tied to maritime security, and that blue economy and the transportation of goods on the seas is going to be super important to the future of our country. And so we're all aligning to that effort. Okay. And to that end, we have the energy security framework: reliability, resiliency, and efficiency. So we're not walking away from efficiency because we need the efficiency to pay for the reliability and resiliency, as you guys well know. But to that end, we're wholly focused on delivering lethality, getting the power to build the ship, getting the power to project the force, especially like for the Joint Strike Fighter, and we'll talk about the different projects, but getting resilient power so that we can train the fighter pilots so that they can deploy with the carrier air wings. To date, we've delivered about $1.6 billion in additional infrastructure that has gotten aligned over the last few years, wholly focused on resiliency. All of that infrastructure upgrades is largely funded by other people's money. And so the point of collaboration that the Colonel talked about is critical. We have to work with you guys. We need your innovative ideas to deliver on some of these projects. We're taking a fence-to-fence approach. We're looking at everything within a fence line to garner savings. We're aggregating the energy conservation measures so that we can accumulate as much savings as possible to improve the industrial processes that exist on our bases or to drive reliability and resiliency. What we're doing is we're focused on the most highest energy security priorities that exist across the Navy, and we're focusing our resources on taking care of those first. In the past, we have been looking at, just like the Colonel said, we have been looking at where was there an opportunity for a renewable energy project, and then we were pursuing that, and that was going to be good enough. That's not good enough anymore because we don't have enough money to chase all these other goals. So we're laser focused on what do we need to do right now to support force projection and force generation. These are the list of the projects that we intend to award in FY19. They are largely third-party finance projects, except for the URSIP projects. I'm not going to go into the URSIP program because it's exactly the same as what the Colonel discussed before. The projects are scattered throughout the country. If you guys have any questions about each of the individual projects, happy to talk to you about it. But it's super important for the small business community to partner with the ESCOs to be involved in these projects, because you guys are the drivers of innovation that make the project successful. Y'all often come to see me, and you always are bringing new and innovative ideas that give me things to think about or to build into these projects that we're working with the bigger ESCOs, or even an idea for an URSIP project. Here's where our project opportunities are throughout the country. I'll get into a couple of examples that I share these examples with you of similar projects that we're doing across the country, and is a focus of the office on how we're driving to get resiliency and enhanced maritime readiness. So the New London project, we outleased 1 acre of land for a 7.4 megawatt fuel cell, and our in-kind consideration was directed power to the waterfront. We're marrying that project up with a ESPC project to build out the microgrid, and then we're getting a complete project, the final pieces of the circuit for the complete microgrid, with a $5 million state grant from Connecticut. This project, Marine Corps Air Station Yuma, we gave up I think it was 12 acres at Marine Corps Air Station Yuma for a Tier 4 diesel generator, 24 megawatt Tier 4 diesel generator that provides complete backup power for the base. So we've had 67 outages that the base has been able to ride through because of the generator, which enables us to complete Joint Strike Fighter training for the Marines on schedule. No impact to training. At PMRF in Kauai, we've had a historic power quality and quantity problems. We outleased 134 acres for 19 megawatts of generation, and we partnered with AES for a 60 megawatt hour battery that will provide black start capability for the Pacific Missile Range facility, so that when we have a power quality problem or a power quantity problem, the testing won't be impacted. That's the largest testing range. It's a multi-dimensional testing range. It's important for ballistic missile defense tests. This is probably one of our flagship projects, and Skipper Monreal, Cap Monreal there at the front, can talk to you more in greater detail than I can on this project, but it was really our first look at a fence-to-fence resiliency project at a very important base in U.S. Southcom's territory. It's a great force projection platform for Southcom's AOR, and essential as part of our strategy and essential to maritime readiness. The infrastructure is at end of life, and we're financing a $360 million infrastructure upgrade, and how we're doing that is converting the fuel from diesel to liquid natural gas. That's a novel approach, and we think that conversion and the savings that drives can result in further infrastructure upgrades at other island locations that we have. Lastly, we have to spend some time and focus on cybersecurity. And again, this is a place where the small business community can really step up and support what we're trying to do. Well, cybersecurity needs to be a part of all of our projects. We're getting smarter and smarter on how to do this every day. We have cybersecurity included in the Guantanamo Bay project. That's one of our first ones where it was included in great detail. We're building a control system test bed so that when industry is developing the facility-related control systems that are a part of these projects I'm talking about, they can test them there and get authority to operate on the system before the project is completed. The XWIC, our Expeditionary Warfare Command, is building the control system test bed. We got a brief just yesterday, and so it's not included in this, but they're going to be ready to start taking control systems from industry this spring, and so we're going to be picking a couple ESCOs to partner with us to take them through the first test bed and test out their protocols for achieving RMF. One of the things that we're super interested in is making sure that we partner with the other services. The Army has a test range. We want to be able to inherit those authorities into our test center so that we could test those control systems, but not retest things that have already been approved by another service. So that's kind of new news that we've got. The last thing I have is looking out into 2020 and 2021, what are those opportunities that'll be available for y'all? This year, we're fast-tracking a ESPC project at Naval Surface Warfare Center, Indian Head. NAVSEA is going to fund that, so it's not going to be wrapped up in some of the funding problems that we're having with CNIC. NAVSEA is going to fund that, and it's going to be focused on improving the industrial controls at Indian Head. We're also doing a distributed energy resource management system study in southwestern United States that I think will result in other finance projects. We're also doing a focused look at San Nicolas Island and San Clemente Island, where that will be some kind of a financed energy project, or it might even be one of the new other transactional authorities that Congress has provided us. We're doing a IGSA for resiliency with the city of San Diego, and we're going to kick off that project in the spring. We had talked about doing a regional ESPC project for Navy District, Washington. That's still on the plate. I don't think there's going to be enough money to do that this year, so it's going to get pushed off into 2021. So that concludes my presentation, and look forward to y'all's questions.
Thanks, John. Dan Soto with the Air Force Rates and Resilience Division. We've changed our name to reflect what we're doing. So what we'll be talking about, again, we'll try not to repeat what my colleagues have said. We're definitely focusing on have the same approach of how to do things. We can't afford resilience everywhere, so and I'll get to that in a few minutes. I took a couple of notes to answer some questions right off the bat. I will say that the people of Tyndall and Panama City are doing well, at least physically. Mentally, it's a tough thing because the places are not so well. I was lucky. I was on the Panama City Beach side, so personally wasn't affected as much. But it's going to be a while before they're ready to operate again. But they are planning to rebuild, and so there's going to be certainly opportunity in the area. So the other one, I think everybody knows that the slides are going to be available. You'll get an email, just like you got to attend here, with the links to the slides. And then finally, yes, I am staying for the football game on Saturday against LSU. All right, so just a purpose slide here. Hopefully everybody's going to give us some information as part of this conference. It's a conversation we need to have with you. As my colleagues have said, we're looking to you for the solutions. And then I will be talking about some breaking news that has not been at least briefed in a public forum. It is public knowledge. That our organization has gone through for Air Force Energy. So here's an organization for the folks that don't understand how we work. We work through the Chief of Staff of the Air Force Materiel Command, the Installation and Mission Support Center, and then we're the Air Force Civil Engineer Center. So we have an Office of Energy Assurance in Crystal City up in DC area, and then our Energy Directorate. If you look, the four directorates on the left-hand side of the slide are in San Antonio, Texas. The three on the right, of course, stationed are at Tyndall. So, but the change here is that Mr. Bob Hughes, who's the director of Office of Energy Assurance, is also now the CN director. So he's going to be traveling back and forth as we get back up to speed So he'll be boss of both of those organizations. I have some org charts at the end of the presentation as well to show you. So here's some of the transition, a timeline. The actual what is considered short, mid, and long term may change with the events that happened, of course, with the hurricane. But bottom line is, we were already on a timeline to have to combine the organizations because of they were actually manned up in D.C. with term positions, so or borrowed positions. So that's going to be something that was already going to happen, and this will just focus the effort now. So, of course, we're going to do this right, hopefully, but again, AFCEC as an organization has been changing, and our Tyndall organization has been changing for the past 9 years. I think I've had a change of some type every year I've been there, so it's nothing that new for us. So our boss always wants us to have a why, and you've heard it from my colleagues of why we're doing this. It's certainly not from an Air Force enterprise perspective. We are not looking at individual installations. We're looking at the mission thread. So we're looking at what, across the world, how that mission is affected and making sure that mission is ready to go and resilient. So we are going to have installations still doing work, and they will still be doing things through their local contracting agencies, and some will be doing some energy efficiency things. But everything we're going to be doing from an Air Force enterprise perspective will be with mission assurance as part of that mission thread. So just a quick for the Office of Energy Assurance. So this is obviously now also going to be our mission and vision. If you are new to what we do, the sweet spot is our boss, Mr. Correll at SAF IEE Energy. We're going to be doing what he's done now is basically taking the cost-effective and the cleaner. Those bubbles are much smaller. They're not equal sized. The resilient bubble is the big one now. So, but again, we are always trying to do things smart, and trying to hit that sweet spot is always going to be what we're going to try to do. So the storefront, the Office of Energy Assurance has established a storefront, and that's going to be all of yours. Main point of contact is going to be through that storefront. They've got a website. It's open to the public. There's also a separate side open to DoD Common Access card holders that you can get into from the requirement side. So requirements are going to be coming from you guys, of course, from us, and of course from the mission owners. So we're going to be taking that, and we're going to be developing strategies to look at that and have one single point of contact to be able to go to. So our bases will still be coming to AFCEC for the technical reach back and capabilities that we can provide, expertise and guidance, but the execution will be done, of course, at the base. And if you didn't know, for the Air Force, we use all execution agents, the Navy, the Army, even Defense Logistics Agency, so and of course the Air Force Installation Contracting Agency. So we have a multitude of ways to find work. There is also an Air Force Civil Engineer Center public web page where you can find the opportunities as well. So if you've been in any other briefings where AFCEC is briefed, you've seen those slides. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to facilitate, the proper, that we're making sure we're doing the right solutions, and then, of course, integrate not only with the public agents, federal agents, other federal agencies, and the public. So again, as I said, these are the same goals, a slightly different way of showing the approach. The big thing we're going to be having to work on is the standardization, because nothing is ever the same, but we've got to at least standardize the approach, and hopefully that will help you all as well. So I don't have project opportunities for you all. Those come out through the normal process, but we do have some opportunities where we're looking for your help, okay? Money drives everything. As you've heard, we do things with other people's money. We try to do that with alternative financing strategies. But at the same time, what you can do is provide those ideas. A mission owner really doesn't care how much it costs. He wants his mission resilient. But if you can help that mission owner understand what the cost is of his mission assurance, that's if nothing else, that's a tiebreaker. If we can quantify the savings or the cost avoidance of doing an initiative or a solution, that's going to go a long ways to advocacy for that project or that initiative. So we're definitely looking for your help on that. The cybersecurity, won't talk too much about that. We're all, no problem. We're all dealing with that. I won't say that we have all the solutions, all the answers. We do have, a unified facilities criteria that we have that everybody, all the services use. That's out there, that's public for cybersecurity, so what the requirements are. Everybody is using the risk management framework. If you know what that is, if you're in the cyber area, we're definitely looking for solutions from industry on that. We definitely don't have, we have offices standing up for cybersecurity, but we don't have all the answers for sure. And then if you didn't know, the Air Force prefers that the public sector or industry own and operate our new energy technologies. As we just talked about with cybersecurity, that makes it even harder to be able to do that, almost having to have somebody on site versus being able to do it from a centralized location. Our future cybersecurity solution will be something that can be done enterprise-wide, but we're not there yet. So we're not as lucky as the Navy has their own system. We don't have that. So still working that. So here's some future things that we're going to be talking about. For all different reasons, the way that what we're doing now, we're going to need people that have clearances, that are able to go into areas where there's a mission, sensitivities, and so trying to figure out those solutions of how we can best do that, because we're not going to be able to get everybody with the same clearance, or not every person is going to, every company is going to have it. So we're looking for those kind of solutions, smart solutions on how to handle those. Also, the integration piece that the Office of Energy Assurance will be doing, as well as us, working with the public, working with industry, working with academia, to get those solutions faster. And I mean, you guys are the ones that are bringing us those solutions as well. So being able to be that integrator and facilitator is going to be something we're looking for, because we are limited in what we can see, obviously, even though we're trying to push that envelope and put that lens out higher. So let's see. As promised, here's the org charts. Again, you'll get these slides. As you see, Mr. Hughes, he's kept his same. That's his number, his DC number, obviously, but he'll be there. On-site, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Jokinen will be our lead. He's the acting, was the acting division chief or directorate, and now he'll be the deputy. And then if you can't read the legend, it says in the gold are your main points of contact. And this is the Crystal City office. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen. We'll go to questions now. I will promise you that if there's any slide updates, we'll get them posted directly. If you guys send them to me, I'll get them to Bell, and we'll get them up on the site and make sure everybody gets access. I am certain we have a few questions. We have some microphones moving around the room, and please wait till we hand you one. I don't even have to direct you. Just work your way forward.
Hi, my name is Catherine Otis with Bechtel National, and I saw in your energy plan you have, renewable energy resources, gas and diesel, but is there a place for advanced small reactors, nuclear reactors in the future?
I do know the DOD we have initiatives there. We are going to test one. How quickly that happens, I do know one of our bases in Alaska has asked the question, and they're in our Office of Energy Assurance has visited with them. It's probably 10 years away if we're lucky, but we are starting to look at that.
From the Army perspective, when we shifted to the security and resilience, I think all energy methods are kind of back on the table, right? I'm not aware of any small nuclear reactors being considered, but, like for the backup generation, that might be diesel generators, right? So things are back, I think anything's on the table if we can figure out how to make it make sense, so.
Yeah, to echo what my Air Force colleague was talking about, they've got with working with OSD, there's an exciting new technology out there with a nice financial model in the right location to test this thing at. Well, most of the Navy bases are on the coastline in highly populated areas, not the best place to be the first modular nuclear reactor. Besides, we already have modular nuclear reactors. They're on our submarines, and they work great. And so there's a strong culture in nuclear safety within the Navy that is based on a maritime modular nuclear reactor. I think the Air Force with OSD is really going to make some great headway in doing it in a remote location, and I think you guys are going to hit it out of the park. It's pretty exciting what OSD is doing, and they're leading the way on that.
I don't know where they are right now, but supposedly there were 2 pilot projects, one in Alaska, one in Idaho, that were being looked at. And I also just heard today that folks from Oak Ridge are trying to, they would like to lead the way and get one in place as well as a pilot. So it almost seems inevitable, but somebody's got to kind of bite the bullet first.
Thank you.
Hi, Matt McCann from AECOM. So in May of 2018, OSD released an update to their policy on installation energy plans with a pretty aggressive schedule for accomplishment. And I know at least 2 of you referenced that on your slides, but didn't really talk about execution. Could you talk briefly about what your service's execution plan is to get those plans in place?
Sure. I wasn't going to talk about our EMIG process because how many of y'all have heard me talk about the EMIG process? I'm sorry. So you asked it. All right. So we have an energy mission integration process. All of our installations are taking a focused look on where our energy security gaps are. They're gathering the analysis. We've already had the first round where they've come up to DC. They've presented it. We're synthesizing the energy security gaps with the mission assurance assessment, and we're prioritizing all those gaps. We've looked at the data. We've synthesized it with the mission assurance assessment. We're going back out to the regions with the prioritized gaps that we can build the COAs, the different courses of action to close those gaps. So we're going to spend this year doing it. We hope that we'll have our first EMIG where we can select those by the end of this fiscal year. So that's kind of where we're at in the process. So I think in 20, we'll actually begin working on those prioritized gaps. But you saw on my slide, we got $1.6 billion of projects that we need to close on between now and then. So that's kind of our work plan on how to do that. Plus, there's going to be pop-up targets that the CNO is going to want to take us to take care of to directly attack maritime readiness as well as the shipyards. And so that's really where our focus is going to be.
You know, I don't know that the Army has a published timeline for getting this done. I mean, very similar to where the Navy is right now. They've gone out to the installations. They're really trying to work through this prioritization of which installations are a higher priority and what structures on the installations really define that, right? So I think there's a lot of give and take with that conversation, right? Those are some hard conversations to have as a service about one installation or mission is, you know, more important than the other. And then even on an installation, right, there are some functions that are now higher priority than other. And I think those are conversations that folks for a long time have just tried to avoid because there's some negative connotations on that. But we're in the similar process of gathering that information, going up, kind of analyze that. You know, one thing I didn't bring out, but I think it's helpful backdrop, and I'll bring it up now, and John's presentation reminded me of that. I really like the, you call it a laser focus on readiness or maritime, right? And the Army has a laser focus on lethality, right? If you're up at the Pentagon and you're having an Army conversation and you don't have the word lethality in that sentence, you're not coming back for the next meeting, right? So
Doesn't mean electrocuted, right?
yeah, that does not mean electrocuted, right? It's all about, right, the Army is really sensing that for a couple decades of fighting wars and for not really a lot of capital improvement in its warfighting capabilities, right? There are 6 major combat systems which the Army desperately wants to upgrade. You know, helicopters, the next generation tank, the next generation artillery, and they're really lethal systems. And the Army is basically has stopped everything it's doing to have that conversation about how do we get the next generation combat systems into play, right? The next Abrams, the next Bradley, the next Black Hawk, right? So they're having that conversation. That is the conversation that's happening every day at the Pentagon. So all other conversations are kind of when there's time available. And I think a lot of engineers would say, you know, but how are you going to power project these lethal systems across the world without great functioning, safe, secure installations? True concept, but we got to have the systems first. So they're tackling that question first. And that's factoring into a lot of things, right? There are a lot of budget decisions happening in the Army right now about major cuts to free up funding to get at programs which are billions of dollars, right? So I think if some of you are wondering what's kind of slowed down on some things, I think it's because the Army is really having this conversation about the lethality first, and then things are going to come later on that one. So.
John, and I'll ask you because it's been on people's minds, and Chip Marin discussed it in Huntsville the other week about the SPC hold right now and how that's tied into, you know, Futures Command, and I think maybe folks would like to hear that.
Sure. Okay, so this is a little bit of a hearsay. I wasn't chilling out with the Secretary of the Army when he did this, so I don't really kind of know. But right, so the Secretary of the Army put a hold on ESPCs, right? And what we've heard is that he was getting a budget briefing, and that briefing included Army programs and how much money associated with those programs. And so somebody was taking credit for great ESPC and USACE work, and they had in there ESPC, USACE, $300 million last year. And he said, $300 million, I want that money. So stop, you know, and then he asked the people at the table who can explain to me these programs and what value they bring, and just the staff in the room wasn't very articulate on those programs right now. So he said, okay, let's pause, reset, get back on the calendar, bring the team in and explain to me those. I think that's queued up right now for early November. They're supposed to be able to get back in front of them, like November 9th or 16th or about that time, to kind of queue those back up. So we are working very hard through our headquarters, AXM ASA's office, to shape that conversation. I know industry has been asked to help us shape that conversation about the value provided. I think FPCC has done a good job of kind of spearheading that. I've seen a lot of documents going back and forth to have a synchronized message between the construction agent, kind of USACE in this case, and industry about, you know, not availing themselves of these programs is A, you're not going to save any money, but B, you're actually going to put a bill back on installations, right? Because in many cases, These were investments that an installation did not have to do now, right? Maybe ECMs were upgrading all the HVACs, and now a DPW just got a free ticket for 20 years, and he's kind of thrilled about that. So I think that's what I know, Bob, is, but I say it in a sense of that's what we've been told came out of those meetings, right? And, USACE, to my knowledge, didn't have someone at the meeting, but that's where we're going with it.
Thank you
so.
for putting your career on the line, John.
Thanks.
Sorry I didn't
That's
pre-coordinate.
that's not the lethality he's talking about either.
So the Air Force's installation energy plans, our approach is going to be, is certainly going to be a crawl, walk, run. We don't want plans that sit on the shelf and sit there and look pretty. We actually want executable plans. So there wasn't a contract awarded to AE, an AE contract, architect engineer contract for the first 5 bases. Once they do those, hopefully they can provide a template, and we will, the execution for the future and how they will work that will be determined at a later date.
So, Bob Griffin with ADI Energy. To follow up on your comments, Colonel Hurley, with the pause, your slide showed $400 million for ESBC and $200 million for UESC in 19 and 2020. Are those opportunities that are already in development, or are they a combination of future NOOs or separate NOOs, new opportunities that might be coming out in 19 and 20? Once you get through the pause.
Yeah, I'd like to phone a friend here. So, hey, Mike, do you want to talk about where I'm not up on the numbers right now on that. So, Mike.
Please, can we get him a mic, please? Sitting in the middle didn't help you, Mike.
Those projects are in development right now. They're in the pipeline, and that's those are in 19. Those projects are in the pipeline, so they're being developed, and we're looking for the award in 19 of those capital investments, and then likewise, you remember it takes 12 to 18, 24 months to after you do your site investigation, then you do your feasibility study before you get a task order award. So it's that time frame. So we're looking at 19 and 20. So those are already in the pipeline.
And I gave up the mic, but I do have a question for Dan. So real quick, Dan, if I understood your charts correctly, Bob uses become dual-hatted.
Correct.
You're really not putting AVCAC Energy Directorate underneath OEA. Mr. Hughes is now
He's
responsible for the
dual-hatted.
Directorate.
Eventually, the Office of Energy Assurance, as an organization, the bodies go away. So there was going to be one face of energy in the future anyways. This is, again, this is formalizing the who's going to be in charge of that. And so he's going to be in charge of merging the organizations so that we're tied and not duplicating effort and setting up our roles and responsibilities. We've been doing that, to be honest, trying to figure out how to best do energy based on the focus on resilience. We're already duplicating effort with some of our teammates in the same building because there's somebody that has it that's in charge of utility systems, as an example. Well, part of resilience is obviously fortifying your utilities. So we've already had to look at it as an AFTEC organization, how to best do the business of energy in the future. This is just formalizing it.
Yeah, I had a question, but I think it'll be lethal for me to ask a question before happy hour. I don't know, we're coming over on the end, but I'll make this quick. And, for all of you, earlier this week, SAME has had a initiative to kind of reinstitute partnering across Milcon and others. And I would contest that the energy projects are the largest, most complex projects that you have, and that's where you have the greatest risk in execution and probably the best case for partnering. And we briefed the service chiefs, and I guess, Cindy, you were a service chief today, so thanks for sitting in for that one for Admiral Korka. But it got resounding support from that one. Can you address how you're specifically addressing partnering for your energy projects? And, Colonel Hurley, I know you've had a great outreach for the last couple of, last year with industry and quarterly reviews of the programs with the ESCOs, and for NAFAC, I know you've had some really complex projects. You've kind of done it out of necessity. But going forward, can you all kind of address your approach on partnering for these complex energy projects?
You can go this.
So the only way we're going to get or make forward progress on any of these projects is really tight partnership. And the Guantanamo Bay project, or the Guantanamo Bay project, $360 million project, we've really learned a lot about the necessity for partnerships. We've started a quarterly review with the ESCOs. We're having them in different locations. We're learning a lot from that. I am on, especially where there's problems. We're going to keep going with that program and keep the collaboration. That really, we're seeing that as the way forward, and that takes some training of the workforce, because we're used to the traditional financing, we're used to the traditional way that we do projects, design, bid, and then build, and very regimented process where there's limited opportunities for collaboration, and that just doesn't work with energy EULs, ESPCs, or UESCs. And so we've got to find that happy medium where we respect the procurement integrity, but can have the level of collaboration that allows the project to move forward. And so there's always going to be some tension there. But I feel like we've made progress, but there's a long way to go.
So this wasn't a 1 hour session. I'm now realizing we're a few minutes over. So these will be the last replies. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not going to say much more. John said it perfectly. There's a balance we've got to find, but we cannot do business like we did in the past. It just won't work. It takes too long, and we get bad products. So we're just going to have to force the people into that, because that's the hardest part. Yeah, very good.
I think I think with the partnerships, I think it's easy to say we need partnerships, and how you actually develop those is pretty complex. But yeah, I think there's a brute force element of it, if you will, where you just have to invest the time in it. And it's one thing to say partnership or to put it on a visioning slide or something, but if you're not going to put the time into getting honest feedback and try to incorporate that feedback, I just question where it is. And so I think, and hopefully industry's seen this over the last couple of years, you know, at least Huntsville Center, we're trying to do a better job of listening to industry, not being sensitive to the comments, really seeing what it is we can impact and affect, and developing that, right? And so that's one of it. And part of that, quite frankly, is even though these are very complex projects and they're very technical projects, I think you have to put the right staff in there that are willing to partner. And some, you know, and it's easy to say this is, you know, we need just a room full of electrical engineers and nuclear engineers and, you know, and the smartest person will win. But you actually have to have people in there with the skills to partner. And maybe we didn't always have that, and we're trying to work towards what that is. But we have to listen to kind of get there. The other thing that I think I've found with partnership that's perhaps a tougher nut to crack, but just as important, is we owe industry a better vertical alignment in the U.S. government team, right? So if I'm partnering, you know, with AECOM, that's great, but if I haven't lined up headquarters USACE and the AXM and the ASA's office, it's not going to be as productive. And so we owe to you, I owe to you. That's my job as commander. I've got to work with headquarters and AXM and the ASA's office, and to do our best to come up with a united effort, united around partnership, right? That's got to be one of the key legs of that. And we're not there on that part yet, but we're working pretty hard on it. And I think if we can do that, get as close as it's going to get, but then fight hard to keep it aligned, I think you'll see the results of that. But I'm not sure we get there yet, because there is a little bit of, you probably do notice it, but maybe not everyone does. You know, there's a little, you know, between the centers and the districts and your executing levels And headquarters and the Army staff, right, they're like clutch plates, right? And they're slipping or there's friction, and it's tough to keep those together, but we really got to do that. And I think that's really a missing part of being better partners with industry is we got to line up all the commands. And to be honest, administrations change all the time, and we didn't do a good enough job catching it when that team changed this time and responding to that.
And I think Mike Norton has something to add. He walked all the way to the back for a microphone.
Well, let me just tag on a little bit to what he said, but I want to go down a little bit lower because he had a good point, especially on the energy resiliency and security about aligning the government speak and to have better definition of what our requirements are, especially in the energy resiliency and security aspect. I also think as part of the partnership, we're really trying to listen more closely to what you're saying. And what that means to me is that we're listening to make sure that our task order or RFPs are more clear on what we want, so we are more clear on our expectations from you. And I don't think in the past we have done as good a job as we should have or could have. So we're working with that. I know Mark Dowie, who is the branch chief, and then the program manager, who we've had some turmoil and leadership on the SBCs and others, but I know they're working towards that. This week and next week are two big conferences that we attend. I think this week is FUPWIG, I think, or is it next week is FUPWIG. This week is NAESCO. That's what it is. And I know that we have people who are attending both of those to reach out to the energy service companies and to the utility companies and to the ESCOs, again, who are partnering with utility companies who are doing some of our UESC projects, because I know you're doing that. And again, and that's working with you and talking with you so you get a better idea of our expectations of what we're looking for and where the Army is focusing and leaning right now, because they are more complex and we don't have the depth, and Colonel Hurley alluded to that, in our organization on the engineering, on the technical side, and we desperately need your help to work through and to find those solutions that we don't have right now. Because in the IT, OT world and the security world, it's not like when you're doing an energy reduction or water reduction, your solutions are pretty good for 5 or 10 years. This stuff is evolving all the time. And you guys and ladies and gentlemen are keeping up with those technology changes and all the things that are going on that I can't even speak at 5 feet. I mean, I can barely spell IT and OT, but that stuff is evolving so quickly. We need your help to put those things in place so that we have secure systems. You've seen it on the news, and you think, well, this is a made-up threat. It's not a made-up threat. If you look at why airlines have shut down because their scheduling systems go down, and they blame it on something, a weather thing, it's not. It's somebody who's doing something they shouldn't be doing. If you read the newspaper and the foreign news about what happened in Ukraine and how that happened so quickly, the lead attack was a cyber attack. So that's something else that was going on that's in the news media. So don't think all these things that the Colonel Hurley was showing everyone was saying is this something that we're going down a rabbit hole. It's a real threat. And it's a real threat to us. But guess what? It's a real threat to you also. You're just as vulnerable as we are, the U.S. government. So it's in your interest and our interest that we secure everything. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, so thanks everybody. Make sure you thank the sponsors who make this, possible, and really for these guys, it always seems this session's kind of towards the end, and thank you for being here. But please give them a round of applause for their time here today.